Hello everyone, Seraphim here. Since we are 1 week away from launch, I wanted to go over the concept of city building and city defenses. I did discuss the concept of air defenses, but when building your city to resist, artillery attacks or people coming in and trying to enter, you obviously want to make sure that your city is optimized or your vault is optimized to slow the attacker. So you obviously want multiple layers. You want your city or your vault to be sectioned off into multiple quadrants. And you ideally, not like here, but you ideally want to make sure that these walls lie outside the chunk borders. So if they claim 1 or 2 chunks over here, they don't have the ability to pass your walls. So here, if they claim the entire chunk, they would be able to not only pass through this wall, but also through this airlock, or at least the front end of this airlock. Of course, between these walls you also want airlocks, as I discussed. So an airlock is basically just a corridor, and it makes it so that if they don't have the entire airlock claimed, or if they happen to chase after you, ideally they would get stuck in the airlock, or it would provide a safe passageway between these different areas of your city. Something of note is that people who do not own the land or who are your enemies, they can indeed interact with pressure plates. This is just something that's part of Factions 3. I can't really change that, so just be conscious of where you put your pressure plates and rely more on buttons and levers, which are subject to permissions. So you would need to be a citizen to be able to access these buttons, but for pressure plates anybody can access them, so just be careful with that. So if I were to redesign this, I would likely want to have a button somewhere around here instead. So if somebody were to chase after me, they would get stuck in this airlock and I would have them trapped. So take home, make sure that your walls are separated by at least a chunk. Make sure your airlocks are in 2 different chunks, so 1/2 of an airlock is in one chunk, the other half is another chunk, as a way of making sure that, if your land is being overclaimed, and it comes down to just 1 or 2 or 3 power that you don't have enough of to keep your claims safe, you don't just have somebody completely steamroll through your base. Another thing are elevators. So it can be hard to get around in a large base like this. You could obviously put ladders, but that's not always the best. So this is something from the space plugin. It's called elevators. If I hit the space key, it will take me up a level if there's a wool block above, and if I hit shift, it will take me 1 block below. So these are actually custom items, they're not just normal white wool. So if I type /space, turn on the resource pack so I can actually see the custom GUI. This is going to take a moment. /space, you have machines and workbenches, elevator. Sneak to move down a level, jump to move up a level, and you can create this through this crafting recipe. And you need 2, of course. So this will allow you to go up and down levels. Another thing, besides wanting multiple walls and making sure that they're durable, you need to consider the material that you want to use to build. Now, cobblestone is known to have a pretty good blast resistance, but the one material that has the highest blast resistance before obsidian and bedrock is, well, Endstone. I just hit it with a cannonball and it really only punched through 1 block, essentially, 2 deep. So it speaks volumes of how capable Endstone is. So if you don't have a lot of obsidian, you can always just use Endstone and just mine Endstone and build your walls out of Endstone. It's a good way to resist damage. So that's that. Let's talk about fall traps. So maybe someone's coming to invade and you obviously want to just confront them. You want to fight them on the outer wall before they get too close. Well, there are different kinds of fall traps. This fall trap is where there are crafting benches at the bottom. The problem with crafting benches is you can no longer right-click when you're surrounded by crafting benches unless you hit shift. Or I think, yeah, even if you hit shift, it won't let you. So you don't want the buttons here. These buttons are a mistake. But if it was only crafting tables, if you tried to throw splash potion, you would not be able to. The only way is if you threw it up. and you would effectively be stuck. You could pearl out as well. That is something you could do. I'm kind of bad at this. Okay. But maybe if you had cobweb at the bottom or something like that, or cobweb at the top, or in the middle, you could prevent people from pearling out. They would just pearl into the cobweb and fall back in. So that's one way. Another way is just your traditional UHC actions fall trap. Fall down, and it doesn't have to be crafting tables necessarily. You don't have to make everything out of crafting tables, but just some, you know. The way that this works is that they fall down on the platform, and you have this half slab opening, and you ideally, you know, because they're in your claim, hopefully, they would not be able to get out. So you would probably want to jump in through a ladder and come down on the other side and just keep hitting them and eventually killing them. If this wasn't in your claim, it's still quite useful because it is challenging to get out of these traps, especially if you were to line them with buttons, because once they are lined with buttons, you actually cannot... what is it? You would have to build off of them, so you would have to remove the buttons first and then tower up. So things like buttons and signs are useful in that respect. But just very basically, this is a KB trap. You would want to hit somebody into it. And if they were in your claims, you could just kill them, or you could even, you know, trap them. That would be a log box trap. Because this is on normal mode, you cannot starve to death, so if they don't have anything to kill themselves with, they would essentially be stuck there until somebody lets them out, or their buddies get them out, or the land gets overclaimed. So you could easily just build a vault or a jail cell around this KB trap, and that would be your person vault, a log box vault. Alright, I am almost done. We're going to discuss the concept of resource vaults. So obviously on the server there are no ender chests. There is no way of you hiding you know, your valuables and stashing them in place. You cannot claim land except in the overworld. So while you can go and build in other dimensions and maybe build some very basic grinders, you would not want to like just drop loot down there because the dime map isn't rendered for those worlds. So if you just start flying out and you want to drop chest something, people can follow your trail. So in general, don't hide your stuff in other dimensions. It's not going to work out. Ideally, you would want to build a vault in this dimension where you can actually claim things. So how would you build a vault? Well, the idea of a vault is you want to slow down their mining in, of course. And you also want to make it challenging for them to claim. So if they don't have the ability to overclaim easily, you would ideally want to make sure that they have to claim as many chunks as possible or pass as many barriers as possible. So there's such a thing as the pyramid. So the way the pyramid works is that it's built so that it is, you know, that way regardless of which side you mine in from, you will end up having to mine the same amount of blocks. So this is known as a pyramid, it's known as a spike, and this is probably one of the most secure ways you'd want it built at bedrock because they cannot dig under. This is one of the most secure ways of going about it. And if you wanted to increase the size of the vault, you would just add one block, increase the radius. Because the permissions are based on claiming, it really won't take very long to punch through the obsidian over this spike. So I would honestly suggest other methods, you know, maybe adding lava, encasing it in lava, adding multiple layers to it, making a very thick wall of obsidian, and just continuing to add layers and different traps that just complexifies the way you would breach this vault. And when you combine a spike with an actual, you know, proper vault with multiple layers, you obviously would have a very secure structure of storing materials, and that is probably how you'd want to go about it, because you obviously don't want, you know, your stockpiles of wealth just sitting around in a chest, in some random chest, be it so your friends don't go around and steal it, as well as other people don't just punch in through one wall of wood and just rob it, so you want to be conscious of that. One last thing I want to go over are corridors. I realize I've taken a lot of time. Last thing I want to go over are corridors. So, as I mentioned, taking the crafting table principle. Okay. You obviously cannot throw, if you have crafting tables surrounded you, as well as like interactable objects, in this case signs. You'd have to click specifically on the block to be able to throw it. So that would be also another way of hindering, you know, someone else being able to just pot and save themselves. As well as if I try to eat here, so see, if I click on any of these blocks, I will not be able to eat. So those sorts of things do help out. Though I'm not an expert, I have never done much factions. I've played a little bit of Civ, and I imagine many people who have done factions or just are more attuned to design will be able to come up with more sophisticated things. But in general, make walls, make sure they're chunks apart, make sure your airlocks are chunks apart, fall traps. There's also sand traps you could use, basically. Someone's chasing you, but these are really the basics. And of course, when you're building your walls, you obviously want a place to shoot from. And if parts of your wall get taken, you can move to the closer areas. So this would allow you to move between areas, and ideally you'd want an airlock somewhere here, so you might want a door here. Something like that. You want a door, and then maybe have endstone and a button on top, and make these like sealed corridors rather than open corridors. And that's how you would want to do it. So you can move between outer and inner layers in case these parts of the wall get taken, or in case you're just running away. These traps are a good opportunity to trap people. Well, rather these structures, these features are a good opportunity to trap people in between airlocks and KB traps, and you can probably just create a prison around them and just imprison them there and build a vault around them to imprison individuals of problematic nature, and you could probably negotiate their release, probably for reparations or something of the other. Alright, the last thing I want to cover that really isn't a design thing, but more of something that I think will be an interesting mechanic as a part of the server. It's not a plugin, it has nothing to do with factions claiming, but the idea of soft power. So, of course, the amount of land you can actually claim is limited. You can't just claim, you know, an entire continent and just create an infinite amount of buffer land to make it impossible to raid. In the same sense, you also can't just go around claiming everything. You may have certain continents of interest or areas of interest you don't want people stealing from. Maybe there's a desert nearby you, you don't want people taking your sand. So this is where I consider something known as soft power. Soft power involves just being able to navigate the map very quickly, so you can sort of get in there and tell people to go away or just attack people. And one of the ways of doing that, excuse the damage, are Prosthesis Chambers. So if somebody was on this outpost, they can easily call people by creating the stasis chamber. Okay, that's a glitch. You can easily create an Prosthesis Chamber. The way that it works is if when this Enderpearl is interacting with an entity, it will teleport you immediately to the area. So you could easily create a chunk loader system and wire the redstone between multiple fast travel points. Basically, you just want to make sure that the redstone is loaded so you can fast travel between areas very quickly. And you could have a going and coming Enderpearl, so every time you go, you might want to you would put an Enderpearl on the other one, so that way when you trigger some redstone on the other side, it will teleport you here, and vice versa. So using Prosthesis Chambers, you can easily use this for fast travel systems, as well as use it to get between parts of land that you want to defend. In general, creating little outposts that you have material stashed in. I think actually the chests are gone. Yeah, having material stashed in, that way you can defend areas of interest that you care about, as well as sort of exert soft power. This is also kind of useful if you want to start, you know, start your conquest. You may not want to just show up one day and try and attack people, but instead you want to create these defensive structures around them so you can create a raid base, so to speak. So this is not necessarily a plugin or anything, but it's just an idea that I had and I thought was worth sharing.